Okay, Math 3, welcome. You got how to write the equations of a circle. This is just the first part of 2, so this is equations of circles. So we've got the standard form of an equation of a circle. Actually, it's what we call a center form, center radius form, or some people even call it vertex form. It's very similar to vertex form of a quadratic, but obviously this is a circle. So we know that the HK is going to represent the center, the H and the K are going to represent the center. And then R, of course, always stands for radius in a circle. A couple examples to look at down here. I want you to identify the center and the radius of these. So I'm going to write it out as the first one, x minus h. Obviously the h is a 4 here. That's what I'm seeing. And I'll do the same thing with the y part, y minus k. Now recognize on this one that it's actually negative 3, of course, because you have to get minus negative in order to get that positive 3. So my center is 4, negative 3. Now the radius, I hope you recognize, is pretty straightforward. The radius has to be 5. Alright, now we generally don't write the radius like 5 squared. We generally write it more like this guy over here, and that's what we're going to look at next. So let's try another one. Looking at this one here, x minus h, it's clear that h has to be a 0 because there isn't one. So my h is a 0 here. The y, or excuse me, the k value is going to be that 5. So my center is going to be 0, 5. Now over here, I recognize 49. 49 is a perfect square, so I rewrite it as 7 squared, and now it's pretty clear to see that 7, just like over here, 7 is my radius. That's the idea. Last example, a little bit more typical. This is a bad example. I wish I could get a different number for you, but that's alright. So we'll run through these pretty quick. I hope you can recognize the center quickly. Now you can see the center is quick. It's negative 7 here, positive 2 here. Now this guy's a little tricky. If the square root of 10, if all that's equal to the square root of 10, then that means that's equal to r squared, right? Well, I'm going to change the square root of 10 to a decimal, something weird, 3.16, blah, 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 equals r squared. So, of course, to get r by itself, I square root both sides. So my r here, is about 1.78, my radius. Now, I could also have written it in this form and had the square root of 10 and then taken the square root of 10 again, which ends up being the 4th root of 10, but that's for another discussion. Alright, a more common way to see things is to get an equation like this. This one I hope it's clear to see. You need the center and the radius for everything. Well, the center I hope is super obvious to you. It's 0.43. And the radius, we're going to have to think about. Well, we can go ahead and start writing the equation with the center. The radius, I have to look at this. How am I going to figure out the radius? Well, I'm going to count. If I count out there, it's 5. I can count down, left, over. Anyway, the radius is 5 if I count horizontally or vertically. So that means it's 5. So my radius is r squared over here is 25. Now this next one, a little bit different. Notice this time I didn't give you the coordinate plane, which made it a little bit harder. The center is still easy, so I can still write out what I know about the center. But I have to think about that radius squared. Now I'm going to have to work for that radius squared. If I come over here and look, there's a couple ways I can do this, but one way is I can think about, I can either use the distance formula, or, and this is the way I'm going to use on this problem, I could draw a right triangle. Now, how does the right triangle help me? Okay, well, the right triangle helps me simply by me looking to the left 3 and down 4. It's easy because now I can use the Pythagorean Theorem. And most of you prefer the Pythagorean Theorem over the distance formula. So if I do that, I find out that my c squared is 25, so c is 5. But what I'm going to go through, I'm going to say the c's out. I'm going to put r in its place because it's really, that's what I found was r. That c represents the radius So that is 5 squared, so of course that's 25. Finally, the last problem is one with no graph at all. And I'm looking in this situation. If I'm looking between points A and B, now this gives me the diameter, okay? And what I need to know is I need to find the distance between those 2 points. If I know my diameter, then I can easily find the radius. So I'm going to use the distance formula to find the distance between those 2 points. Now the distance formula, here we go, it's running through. This is old math 1 work here. We just have to memorize it and know what it is. Alright, so run through your distance formula. It's x2 minus x1, y2 minus y1. But anyways, I found out that the distance, or the diameter, has to be about 8.9. Well, if that's the diameter, then of course the radius is half of that. So now I know the radius. The center, if this is the diameter, and these are the end points of the diameter, then the center has to be exactly halfway between those. So the center is going to be at the midpoint. So again, here's another Math 1 formula. So I'm going to use the midpoint formula now. And of course, the midpoint formula is when you add the two x's, x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y2 plus y1 divided by 2. And now I know my h and my k. So I can fill out my equation of my circle.